The ALR-69 pinged, a sharp, digital scream. Missile lock. Elena Rostova's world compressed to the cockpit's green glow. Outside, the slate-gray sea blurred into the slate-gray sky. Smoke choked the canopy, the acrid bite of hydraulic fluid burning her throat. The A-10, call sign Valkyrie 1-1, shuddered violently, a wounded beast bleeding altitude. "Valkyrie, you are not cleared for this approach." The radio crackled. The LSO's voice, panic under pressure. "No hook, no gear. You will foul the deck. Wave off. I say again, wave off." Her left engine sputtered, a death rattle. The stall warning wailed. She ignored him, her gaze fixed on the impossibly small rectangle of steel rising from the waves, the USS Truman. Her right hand gripped the stick, the left jammed the throttle forward. The remaining engine screamed in protest. "Valkyrie, call the ball!" the LSO demanded, a final plea. Her thumb hovered over the mic switch. Too slow, too heavy. The deck rushed up. "Negative ball," she breathed, the words swallowed by the cockpit. She wasn't landing, she was crashing. Black, 96 hours earlier, Bagram Air Base. The cold of the Bagram flight line bit through her flight suit. It was 0430. The air smelled of dust, diesel, and the sharp, metallic tang of JP-8 fuel. Captain Elena Rostova, call sign Valkyrie, ran a gloved hand along the fuselage of her A-10. Click, click, click. Her index finger traced the line of recessed rivets, feeling for the slightest imperfection, the faintest ripple in the skin that might suggest stress. The aircraft, Warthog 719, was an old beast, scarred and stained, but Rostova knew its every joint. "Chief signed off on her an hour ago, Captain," a voice drawled from the shadows. Lieutenant Colonel Hammer Vokes, her CO, stood near the starboard landing gear, sipping coffee from a steel thermos. He didn't approve of her pre-flight checks. He saw it as distrust. She saw it as survival. Rostova didn't turn. "Chief's good. I just like to look." "You always like to look." Hammer stepped closer. The light from the maintenance bay caught the exhaustion in his face. "We fly. We fight. We break things. The crew fixes them. That's the rhythm, Valkyrie. Don't fight the rhythm." She moved to the GAU-8 Avenger, the 30mm cannon that defined the aircraft. She checked the drum housing, ensuring the seals were tight. This was the part that mattered. The rest of the plane just carried the gun. "The rhythm's fine, sir," she said, her voice flat, muffled by the pre-dawn chill. "I just don't like surprises." A flash, red smoke in a dusty wadi, screaming static. A voice cut short. Rostova squeezed her eyes shut. The ghost. It was always there, waiting in the quiet moments. 2 years ago, a JTAC, trapped, calling danger close. She had hesitated, waiting for PID, following the ROE to the letter while the man was overrun. Her adherence to the rules had been flawless. The outcome had been catastrophic. She opened her eyes. The memory receded, replaced by the cold aluminum under her glove. No more surprises. Hammer sighed, recognizing the wall she built. "You're the best KS pilot I've got, Elena. But you fly that hog like it's a scalpel, not a hammer." "A scalpel saves the patient, sir. A hammer just breaks the rock." He almost smiled. "Fair enough." He finished his coffee. "Briefing in 5. We've got a hot one. Intel's thin, and the client is high value." Rostova straightened. The familiar pre-mission tension settled over her. Not fear, but a cold, clarifying focus. "Cass? What else?" Hammer turned, his boots crunching on the gravel. "It's a priority tasking, Asset Atlas. They say he's pinned down. Sounds like a goat rope." She gave the cannon one last pat. a hot one, thin intel, the worst combination. It meant the ROE would be tight and the decisions would be messy. She pulled her glove snug, the scritch of the Velcro loud in the silence. The ghost in her memory was quiet now, replaced by the immediate physical reality of the machine. She trusted the machine. It didn't hesitate. The S2 briefing room smelled of burnt coffee and ozone. The low hum of servers vibrated through the metal table. Hammer stood at the front, a laser pointer cutting through the gloom, highlighting a grainy satellite image of a mountain pass. "Target area is here," Hammer said, circling a cluster of structures. "Intel says Atlas is held in this compound, but a QRF is inbound to move him. They're heavy, T-62s, and at least one ZSU." Rostova leaned forward. The topography was bad. Deep, narrow valleys. Perfect ambush territory. "Our window is 30 minutes, Max," Hammer continued. "We need someone to go in low, sanitize the QRF, and stay on station until the extraction birds can get in." "A perfect hog run," Rostova said, her voice quiet. The door hissed open, spilling bright hallway light into the room. A man in a desert tan flight suit, pristine and unwrinkled, strode in. He wore a Navy patch. "Apologies, Colonel," the man said, his voice smooth and confident. He didn't sound apologetic. "I'm Lieutenant Commander Rayburn. Sting, I'm the liaison from the Truman CSG. I heard you had a priority KS." Hammer nodded, annoyed. "We do." Sting glanced at the screen, then at Rostova. His eyes flickered over her Air Force flight suit, lingering for a half-second on the A-10 patch. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched his lips. "Colonel, this is a fast-mover problem," Sting announced, ignoring Rostova completely. "You've got armor and a tight window. My Hornets can be on station in 15. Drop JDAMs on that compound and be feet dry before that hog even gets its engines warm." Rostova's jaw tightened. He sees a relic. I see a shield. The familiar arrogance of the fast jet community. They saw the sky in terms of Mach numbers. She saw it in terms of minutes. Minutes spent circling, protecting the men on the ground. "The compound isn't the primary, Lieutenant Commander," Hammer said, his tone cooling. "The QRF en route is. We need loiter time." "Loiter time is irrelevant if the asset is dead," Sting countered. "Speed is the solution. We hit the objective, eliminate the threat, and punch out. Clean. Surgical." Rostova watched the map. The red route of the QRF snaked through the valley. She knew that terrain. She'd flown it. She uncrossed her arms. "They're masked." Sting turned to her, raising an eyebrow. "Excuse me, Captain?" "The QRF," Rostova said, her voice level. She stood and picked up the second laser pointer, placing its red dot on the valley floor. "Your Hornets are radar-dependent. That QRF is hugging the terrain, using the cush to mask their approach. Your radar won't pick them up until they're 2 miles out. You'll be too fast, too high. You'll miss them." She traced the route. "By the time you get PID, you'll have overshot. You'll have to re-attack, and by then, they'll have Atlas." Sting's smile faded. Rostova continued, her voice cold and analytical. "I'll ingress at 500 feet AGL, visual acquisition. I can stay on station for 40 minutes. I'll see them, I'll kill the ZSU with the gun, and I'll use Mavericks on the tanks. I will not miss." There was no ego in her statement. It was a calculation, a statement of fact. Sting looked from her to the map. He knew the math. He hated it, but he knew it. Hammer broke the silence. "It's Valkyrie's mission, Commander. We'll be happy to use your Hornets for top cover in case their air assets show up." It was a professional dismissal. Sting's neck flushed red. He knew he'd been outmaneuvered, not by rank, but by simple competence. He gave Rostova a sharp, appraising look. The amusement was gone, replaced by something hard. "Understood, Colonel." He nodded curtly to Rostova. "Good luck, Captain. Try to keep up." He turned and left the room. Rostova ignored the jibe. She was already looking at the map, her mind calculating fuel burn, ordnance load, and the precise angle of her first gun run. The mission was hers. The responsibility was hers. Hammer looked at her. "Wheels up in 20, Valkyrie." "Copy, sir." The A-10 carved through the valley, a gray shadow against gray rock. 500 feet. The air was thick, the turbulence grabbing at the wings. Rostova's world was the green heads-up display and the roar of the twin TF-34 engines behind her. Her helmet pressed down, a familiar weight. "Valkyrie, be advised, asset is lame duck." The AWACS controller crackled in her ear. "Convoy is pinned. Location bullseye 090, 10 miles. "Copy," Rostova replied. Her thumb moved, selecting the GAU-8. "Valkyrie is fences in, gun hot." She crested the last ridge. Chaos. Below her, 2 battered land cruisers were stopped, forming a weak L shape. Heavy machine gun fire stitched the dirt around them. Further up the road, half hidden in a rocky alcove, sat the ZSU-23-4. Its 4 cannons spat tracers, chewing the armor of the lead vehicle. Intel hadn't missed it. They just hadn't seen it. "Valkyrie 1-1, visual convoy. Visual ZSU," she transmitted, her voice calm. She banked hard, the G-forces squeezing her chest. "Rolling in, gun pass, north to south." "Where is Atlas?" The ROE screamed in her head. PID on asset required before kinetic engagement. She could not, would not, fire on the convoy, but she couldn't see a friendly signal. No glint tape, no VS-17 panel. The ZSU's turret traversed, finding her. A stream of 23mm shells ripped past her canopy, a sound like popcorn popping, only deadly. The A-10's titanium bathtub absorbed the shrapnel. The jet barely shuddered. Rostova lined up the pipper on the ZSU. Her hand tightened on the stick. Fire, fire now. A flash, red smoke, screaming static. The JTAC's voice. "Where are you, Valkyrie? I'm—" Her finger froze. PID. I need PID. She was too cautious, too slow. The trauma of the past had become a shield, but now it was a cage. She needed to protect Atlas, not just follow the rules. "Atlas, pop smoke, pop mirror, give me a sign!" she yelled, her transmission unheard by the men below. As if hearing her plea, a man broke cover from the rear vehicle. He sprinted, carrying something. He dropped it. A small, dark bag. That's him. That has to be him. It was enough. The hesitation broke. Her thumb depressed the trigger. The BRT of the Avenger cannon was not a sound, but a physical violation. The entire airframe vibrated, a solid 3-second burst, 4,000 rounds per minute. The stream of 30mm armor-piercing incendiary rounds hit the ZSU. It didn't explode. It was erased. The turret ripped clean off, the hull disintegrating into a cloud of fire and black metal. Relief. Target destroyed. The relief lasted 1 second. As she pulled off target, banking hard right, a blinding flash erupted from the ridge she had just passed. A man-pad. A lucky shot, fired blind. She didn't hear the impact. She felt it. A violent, deafening bang slammed her against the restraints. The A-10 snapped left, almost inverted. Warning lights exploded across her console. Engine fire left. Hydraulic failure. Bleed air leak. The cockpit filled with the acrid smell of burning electronics and hydraulic fluid. "Valkyrie 1-1 is hit! I am hit!" She fought the stick, jamming her right rudder pedal to the floor to counteract the dead engine. The plane stabilized, but it was flying heavy, wounded. She looked down. Her gun run had been successful. The ZSU was gone, but it was too late. During her hesitation, the ZSU had gotten its last shots off. The lead land cruiser, Atlas's vehicle, was now engulfed in flames. Men were dragging bodies from the wreck. She had won the South's fight. She had lost the asset. The cold iron of failure settled in her stomach, and she was 400 miles from home, with one engine, no hydraulics, and bleeding fuel. The A-10 was dying. Rostova fought the controls, her muscles screaming. With the port engine gone, the jet was a lopsided brick. The stick shook violently in her hand, a constant, bone-jarring vibration. The fire-warning light pulsed. A relentless, screaming red eye. She'd pulled the fire suppression handle. It did nothing. Altitude 9,000, airspeed 210, decreasing. Her training checklist flickered through her mind. Emergency landing procedures. Section 3, hydraulic failure. She was already there. She was flying on manual reversion, brute force, cables and pulleys, fighting the raw aerodynamics of a 30,000-pound aircraft that wanted to fall. A new warning blared. Fuel low. Fuel low. She looked at the gauge. The needle was dropping like a stone. The manpad hadn't just hit the engine, it had ruptured the main tank. Bagram, 400 nautical miles. Truman, 80 nautical miles. The math was simple. The math was brutal. She would never make it back to Bagram. She'd be a splash mark in the desert 100 miles short. Ditching in the ocean was an option, a bad one. The Hog was famously unsurvivable in a water landing. It was built around a gun, not buoyancy. It would sink instantly. That left the carrier. Her mind recoiled. A-10, carrier, no tailhook. It was a theoretical impossibility. An Air Force joke. The plane wasn't built for it. The landing gear wasn't rated for the impact. The wings weren't stressed for the trap. And she had no hook. Airspeed 190, altitude 7,000. She was falling. The emergency checklist dissolved. It was useless. This scenario wasn't in the book. It was just physics now. She forced her breathing to slow. One breath in, hold. One breath out, detach, analyze. Problem, gravity, solution, lift and thrust, variable, time. She still had one good engine. She had wings. The Truman was a floating runway, a short, moving, hostile runway, but a runway nonetheless. Her calculations said maybe. Her training said ditch. She thumbed the radio switch, changing frequencies to the carrier strike group. Her voice was pure ice, devoid of the panic clawing at her throat. Mayday, mayday, mayday. This is Air Force Valkyrie 1-1. I am single engine, uncontrolled fire, massive fuel leak, manual reversion. Silence. Then a new voice, laced with the tight static of a carrier's ops channel. Valkyrie 1-1, this is Truman approach. Say intentions. Valkyrie 1-1 declaring emergency, Rostova stated. The vibration was getting worse. The airframe was shaking itself apart. Requesting immediate trap. Bearing 095, 80 miles. A pause. Longer this time. The Truman was processing. An A-10. Valkyrie, confirm configuration. Are you hook-equipped? Here it was. The moment of truth. Approach, Valkyrie. Negative hook. I repeat, negative tail hook. I will be landing on the barricade. The radio exploded. Negative, Valkyrie. You are not cleared for a barricade landing. You are an A-10. Ditch the aircraft. I say again, ditch, eject. The gray, endless ocean filled her canopy. Eject. Into that? Into the water with Atlas lost? Her mission failed? Her aircraft gone? No. Unable to comply, she said. The decision settled over her, cold and absolute. She would save the asset. The plane was the asset. She was the asset. I am inbound. 8,000 pounds of ordnance on board. You can take me or you can watch me crash. She didn't wait for a reply. She cut the channel. It was just her and the machine. The stall warning began its high-pitched wail. Airspeed 170, altitude 4,000. She saw it. A gray speck in the gray sea. The Truman. She lined up the nose. Her knuckles were white on the stick. The world shrank to the HUD, the airspeed indicator, and that impossibly small rectangle of steel. Valkyrie 1-1, this is LSO! The voice was new, sharp with authority and rising panic. You are not cleared! Wave off! I say again, wave off! She was too low, too fast. The deck rushed up at her. The deck lights were a blur. The LSO's voice was a frantic scream in her helmet. Valkyrie, you are not cleared for this approach. No hook, no gear. You will foul the deck. Wave off! I say again, wave off! Foul the deck. He was right. The emergency barricade, a massive nylon net, was raised, but she was coming in too hot, too heavy. She'd rip right through it and plow into the parked FA-18s on the bow. The ALR-69 pinged. It wasn't a missile lock. It was the radar altimeter, screaming that the ocean was feet below her. Too fast, too heavy. The end of the angled deck rushed up. Her left wing, heavy with the dead engine, dipped dangerously. She ignored the LSO. Her world compressed to the green glow of the HUD. Her training, her instincts, her entire career screamed, pull up, pull up. But the math in her head, the cold, detached physics problem, said something different. Speed is the enemy. Kill the speed. Valkyrie, call the ball, the LSO demanded, a final, desperate plea. Her thumb hovered over the mic switch. The deck was 50 feet away. 30. Negative ball. The words were a whisper, swallowed by the cockpit. She wasn't landing. She was crashing. At the last possible second, Rostova made her move. It was an act of pure, calculated desperation. She cut the throttle on her one good engine, killing all thrust. Simultaneously, she jammed her right rudder pedal to the floor. The A-10, an aircraft never designed for grace, responded with brutal agility. The nose slewed hard to the right. The entire airframe turned sideways, presenting its broad port side to the wind, transforming the 30,000-pound jet into a massive air brake. The sound was apocalyptic. The wind shrieked. The metal groaned in protest. She hit the deck. It wasn't a landing. It was an impact. The starboard landing gear, which had partially deployed, sheared off instantly. The fuselage slammed onto the non-skid surface. Sparks, a wall of fire, the smell of burning rubber and superheated metal. The A-10 skidded, spinning, a wounded beast bleeding fire and hydraulic fluid. It ripped past the barricade sideways, shattering the nylon net, but shedding its catastrophic momentum. She saw the foul line flash by. She saw the row of parked Hornets. She saw the terrified face of a deck crewman diving for cover. Her helmet slammed against the canopy. The cockpit displays shattered. The world dissolved into a violent, screeching cacophony of tearing metal. Then, a sudden violent stop. Silence. The silence was heavier than the impact. It was absolute. Smoke filled the cockpit, the acrid bite of burning electronics. Her ears rang. She tasted copper, blackness. She woke to the smell of antiseptic and the gentle, rhythmic rocking of the ship. A single fluorescent light hummed overhead. Sick bay. Her head throbbed. Her ribs ached with every breath. The door to the small, curtained-off room opened. A man entered. He was tall, lean, and wore the eagles of a Navy captain. His flight suit was immaculate. His eyes were chips of blue ice. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't ask how she was. Captain Rostova, he said, his voice a low, controlled fury. I am Captain Thorne, the CAG. You have endangered my ship, my men, and my aircraft. You fouled my deck, and you cost me a barricade. You and your flying pig are off this carrier today. Rostova pushed herself up onto her elbows. The movement sent a fresh wave of pain through her ribs. She was in a standard-issue flight suit, not her own. They had cut hers off. Sir, she managed, her voice a dry rasp. Don't sir me, Captain. Thorne stepped closer, his shadow falling across the cot. He radiated a cold, precise anger that was far more intimidating than shouting. Do you have any idea what you did? You ignored a direct order from my LSO. You executed a maneuver that is not authorized, not trained for, and not possible. It was possible, sir, Rostova said. Her throat felt like sandpaper. I'm here. Thorne's eyes narrowed. You're here because my deck crew managed to get foam on that wreck before it lit up my entire flight deck. You're here because you were lucky, not skilled. The accusation stung more than her injuries. Lucky. It wasn't luck, she said, forcing herself to sit up fully. The room tilted. It was physics. I had no hook, no viable gear, and no fuel. Bagram was not an option. Ditching was not an option. It was the deck or the water. I chose the deck. You chose wrong. Thorne's voice was flat. You chose to risk a $5 billion warship and the 4,000 souls aboard it for your one obsolete aircraft. He doesn't see a pilot. He sees a problem, the institutional arrogance. The Blue Water Navy disdain for an Air Force mud mover was palpable. He saw her as the problem, not the fire in her engine. I saved the asset, sir, she repeated, her voice gaining a fraction of its strength. You lost the asset, Captain, Thorne countered instantly. Atlas is captured or dead. Your mission was a failure, and in the process, you've taken my angled deck out of commission for at least 12 hours. You are a liability. He was right about Atlas. The cold iron of failure, which she'd felt in the sky, returned. But he was wrong about the rest. My aircraft is not obsolete, she said, meeting his gaze. It was the only one that could... I am not interested in your opinions on airframe capabilities. Thorne cut her off. I'm interested in getting you and that thing. You flew off my ship. An Air Force C-2 is already inbound. It will be here at 06 Yaku. You will be on it. And my aircraft? Your aircraft is currently a pile of scrap metal in my hangar bay. It will be struck below and eventually dumped overboard. You can't do that. The words were out before she could stop them. I am the captain of this vessel, liaison or not, Thorne said, his voice dropping. I can, and I will. Your command has been notified. They can file a protest. He walked to the door. Rostova's mind raced, dumped overboard. All that data, all that potential. Sir, the plane, it's damaged, but it's not scrap. The airframe is sound. Thorne paused at the door, his back to her. That is not your concern. CAG, she tried again, using his title, the Navy nomenclature. That pig, as you call it, is the only asset in this theater that can get to Atlas. He turned slowly. His face was unreadable. Atlas is gone, Captain. The mission is over. You seem to be having trouble accepting that. You failed. Live with it. He stepped out. A Marine will be posted outside. You are a guest, Captain. Do not leave your room. The door clicked shut. She was alone. The gentle rocking of the ship, which had been almost comforting, now felt like the walls of a cell. He was wrong. The math wasn't wrong. The mission wasn't over. She swung her legs over the side of the cot. The pain in her ribs was a sharp, grounding reminder. She stood, testing her weight. 12 hours. The deck was closed for 12 hours. The C2 was coming at 06 Mokum. She looked at the small, sealed porthole. The sky outside was still black. She had hours. Rostova stared at the steel bulkhead. The hum of the ship's ventilation was a low, monotonous sound. Dumped overboard. The words echoed. A career's worth of expertise, a lifetime of precision, dismissed as scrap. The marine outside her door was a statue. She tried the handle. Locked. A quiet buzz came from the wall intercom. She almost missed it. Rostova. A voice, low and urgent. She pressed the receive button. Here. It's Sting. A pause. Rayburn. Open. The door. It's unlocked. She tried the handle again. It turned. The Marine was gone. Rayburn slipped inside, not with the arrogance of the briefing room, but with the nervous energy of a conspirator. He held a data pad. "You look like hell, Captain," he said. "You're not supposed to be here," she countered. "Neither are you." He handed her the pad. "Kaji's furious. You're the talk of the ship. Half the deck crew thinks you're a cowboy. The other half, they're impressed. They saw the telemetry. They don't know how you did it." "Physics," she said flatly, taking the pad. "Why are you here, Rayburn?" His confidence was gone, replaced by a grudging respect. "Because you were right, about the terrain masking. And because the mission isn't over." Her head snapped up. "What?" "Intel just intercepted this." He tapped the screen. A satellite image appeared, sharper this time. A coastal fortress. "They didn't kill Atlas. He's too valuable. They moved him here. They're going to execute him at dawn." The cold iron in Rostova's stomach twisted. "Guilt. You failed him." "Dawn," she breathed. She looked at the chronometer on the wall. "Uvro 30. That's less than 6 hours?" "6 hours," Rayburn agreed. "We've already run the models. It's a suicide run. The fortress is ringed with Shorad, ZSUs, SA-13s, a fast mover, an FA-18. We're just too vulnerable at low altitude. The ZSUs will shred us before we get a lock. We can't punch through." Rostova's fingers flew across the data pad, zooming in, analyzing the threat rings, the armor specs, the compound layout. Her engineering mind took over, pushing the pain and the guilt aside. "You can't," she murmured. "Your skin is too thin. Your cannon's a pea shooter." "Exactly," Rayburn said, mistaking her analysis for agreement. "It's impossible. Xieg scrubbed it." Rostova stopped. She looked at the fortress schematic. The targets were hardened. The ZSUs were nested, but they were vulnerable from one angle, a direct, high angle of attack strafing run. "It's not impossible," she said. "What? We just established—" "You can't," she repeated, her eyes intense. "But I can." She held up the pad. "The A-10 was built for this. The bathtub can take ZSU hits. Your Hornets can't. My GAU-8 can shred that entire compound in 2 passes. Your JDAMs are too slow, too imprecise for a danger close." Rayburn stared at her. "Rostova, your plane is in pieces. It's chained to the hangar deck. And even if it wasn't, how do you plan to get it off the ship? You have no catapult." Rostova walked to the small, thick glass porthole. She stared out at the dark, wind-swept flight deck. The deck was 900 feet long. An A-10, fully loaded, needed 4,000 feet of runway. But not empty. Not with 30 knots of wind over the deck. Not if you strip the non-essentials. The calculations began to flow, fast and brilliant. Thrust-to-weight ratio, lift coefficient, flap settings, ground effect. It was insane. It was a bar napkin. Theory. What's the Truman's max speed? She asked, her back still to him. 33 knots. Why? She turned, her eyes alive, the ghost of her failure banished by a new, cold resolve. Get me to the hangar bay, she said. I need to see my plane. The hangar bay was a city of steel, cavernous, loud, and smelling of grease, jet fuel, and the sharp tang of salt air. The roar of the ventilation system was deafening. Rayburn led her down a ladder, staying in the shadows, moving with a practiced ease she lacked. Her A-10 was parked in Bay 3, chained to the deck like a captured animal. It was illuminated by harsh maintenance floods, the center of attention. A team of Navy maintenance crew, Skittles in their bright green and yellow shirts, was crawling over it. They weren't fixing it. They were assessing it for disposal. As Rostova stepped into the light, a man slid out from under the mangled port wing. He was older, with graying hair and the gold anchor of a chief petty officer on his collar. His face was weathered, his hands stained black with grease. He held a large wrench. He saw Rayburn first. Commander, this area is restricted. KG's orders. Then he saw Rostova. His eyes hardened. And she is definitely not authorized. Take her back to sickbay. Chief, we just need to look, Rayburn started. I don't care what you need, the CPO snapped. I care about my orders. This mess is my problem now. And I'm telling you, it's scrap. Rostova ignored him. Her eyes were devouring the plane. The port engine was a mangled wreck. The starboard gear was gone, the fuselage resting on a temporary jack. The skin was torn, but the airframe, the central spar, the cockpit tub. She's not scrap, Rostova said, her voice cutting through the hangar noise. The CPO turned to her, his expression a mix of annoyance and pity. Captain, with all due respect, you're an Air Force pilot. You don't know carrier-level damage. This hog will never fly again. Now get off my deck. He thinks I'm just a pilot. The familiar dismissal. She walked past him, ducking under the wing. Hey, I gave you an order, ma'am. She didn't stop until she was at the main hydraulic manifold, where the ruptured lines dripped fluid onto the deck. The crew had tried to cap them. You're capping the wrong line, Rostova said, pointing. The chief stepped up behind her, his face flushing with anger. That's the main pressure line. It was, Rostova corrected, not looking at him. It's fed from the portside pump, which is currently a pile of slag. But you're missing the bypass. The A-10 has a triple redundant system. If you reroute the return line here from the auxiliary reservoir and bypass this fried valve seal, you can restore 70% pressure to the starboard ailerons and rudder. She tapped a specific valve. And the torque spec on those bolts is 450 foot-pounds, not 500. You're over-tightening them. You'll shear the bolt head. The hangar bay, suddenly, seemed very quiet. The CPO stared at the manifold, then at her. The anger drained from his face, replaced by stunned, analytical curiosity. He looked at his own crew, who had stopped working. He knelt, pulling a flashlight from his pocket, and shined it where she had pointed. The bypass. Hell, he muttered. I thought that was a fuel governor. It is on an F-18, Rostova said. On a hog, it's the hydraulic failsafe. We expect to get shot. The CPO stood up slowly. He wiped his hands on a rag, his eyes never leaving her. He didn't see an Air Force captain. He saw an engineer. You got 10 minutes, he said gruffly. Rayburn looked surprised. Chief? You heard me, 10 minutes. The CPO turned to his crew. All right, you heard her. Get a bypass hose on that manifold, Spec 450. Let's see if this fly girl knows her stuff. Rostova was already moving, climbing the inspection ladder to the starboard engine. The gear is gone, she called down. We don't need it. We're stripping it. How many Mavericks did I have left? 2 on the port pylon, the CPO called up, a new energy in his voice. The pylon itself is cracked. Ditch the pylon. Ditch all the ordnance except the gun. We need to save weight. Get me 2,000 rounds for the GAU-8 and top off the fuel. The CPO froze. Captain, fuel, rounds? This plane isn't going anywhere. Rostova climbed down, her face set. Chief, I'm flying it off this deck in 5 hours. He stared at her as if she were insane. That's impossible. The math says it's not. The math? Get me the weight of the aircraft now, stripped, she ordered. Get me the current wind over deck and the max speed of this ship. I'll prove it to you. The chief hesitated, then nodded. Get her the numbers. I think I want to see this. The flag bridge was a world away from the grease and noise of the hangar. It was dark, cold, and quiet. The only light came from the blue and green glow of radar screens and tactical displays. Men spoke in low monotones. The Truman was a silent predator, and this was its brain. Kaji Thorne stood at the central plot, flanked by his operations officer and a skeptical-looking Sting Rayburn. The CPO, Chief Petty Officer Kolfin, stood beside Rostova, holding the datapad. He looked profoundly uncomfortable, a man of the hangar deck forced into the Admiral's domain. Sir, Rayburn began, Captain Rostova has an alternative strike plan for Atlas. Thorne didn't look up from the plot. Lieutenant Commander, I thought I made myself clear. The mission is scrubbed. The risk is unacceptable. We are not losing a Hornet to save a compromised asset. It wouldn't be a Hornet, sir, Rostova said, stepping forward. Thorne's head came up, his eyes fixed on her. The cold fury from sick bay had been replaced by a flat, dangerous calm. You are not in your quarters, Captain. No, sir. I was in your hangar bay. My hangar bay, Kolfin interjected, stepping forward. His voice was rough. Sir, the captain, she knows her aircraft. The port engine is slag, but the starboard is at 98% efficiency. The hydraulics. She found a workaround. We've stripped the landing gear, the pylons, and all non-essential armor plating. We've cut the weight by 9,000 pounds. Thorne turned his gaze to his CPO. It was a look of profound disappointment. Chief, you are entertaining this fantasy? Sir, it's not fantasy. It's the math. Rostova handed him the datapad. On the screen was a simple, brutal calculation. Aircraft base weight, stripped, 2,500 lbs fuel, internal, 5,000 lbs GAU-8, 2,000 RDS, 2,100 lbs total TO weight, 29,600 lbs thrust, TF-34 GS-100X1, 9,065 lbf wind over deck, ship 33 cats plus true, 15 cats, 48 knots required runway, oars sea level, 100 FT available deck, angled, 924 FT. Thorne stared at the last 2 numbers. Your math fails, Captain. You are 176 feet short. You'll drop into the ocean and sink. No, sir, Rostova said, her voice unshakable. That calculation is for a standard runway. It doesn't account for ground effect. The deck is 60 feet above the water. Once I clear the bow, I'll drop into that 60-foot cushion of high-pressure air. It will hold me, just long enough for the wings to bite and climb. A disbelieving laugh came from the operations officer. Ground effect? You're betting your life on ground effect? I'm betting my life on the Bernoulli principle, Rostova shot back. It's physics, not hope. It's suicide, Thorne said, his voice final. He handed the pad back. It violates every page of the NATOPS manual. It is the single most reckless, insane proposal I have ever heard. I will not have a pilot, my crew, and my ship endangered by your desperation. Desperation. The word hit her. He's wrong. The math is right. Sir, Atlas has 4 hours. My desperation is a variable. Your ROE is a variable. The ZSUs are a variable. This math, she tapped the data pad, is the only constant we have. It will work. Thorne stepped so close she could smell the starch on his collar. The answer is no, Captain. I will not have you kill yourself off my flight deck. You are grounded. The mission is scrubbed. He looked past her to the CPO. Chief Kalfan, return to your station. Secure that aircraft for disposal. That is a direct order. Kalfan's face tightened. He looked at Rostova, then at his KG. Aye, sir. He turned and left. Thorne looked at Rayburn. Sting, escort Captain Rostova to her quarters. Post 2 Marines this time. If she so much as opens the door, I will have her in irons for insubordination. He turned his back on her, returning to the tactical plot. You are dismissed, Captain. The finality of it was absolute. The mission was dead. Atlas was dead. Rayburn put a hand on her arm. Elena, let's go. She stared at Thorne's back. He hadn't just rejected the plan. He hadn't even looked at the physics. He had looked at the rulebook, and in the rulebook, she didn't exist. The walk back to sickbay was a silent march of shame. Rayburn was quiet, his earlier spark of conspiracy extinguished. 2 imposing Marines, M4s slung across their chests, flanked them. They didn't look at her. She was cargo. Rayburn stopped at her door. The lock was a new, heavy-duty, magnetic one. Elena, he started, his voice low. I'm sorry. I thought he'd listen to the math. He doesn't care about the math. She cut him off. Her voice was hollow, dead. He cares about the book, and in his book, I'm just a typo. Don't do anything stupid. His eyes pleaded with her. It's just a court-martial. You can fight it. Rostova looked at the cold, gray steel of the door. Fight it. He didn't understand. This wasn't about her career. It was about the man who was going to die at dawn because she had hesitated. Because she had failed. Twice. She said nothing. Rayburn squeezed her shoulder, a useless gesture, and left. The Marines took up positions on either side of her door. The maglock clicked shut with a heavy, final thud. She was in the box. The small room was oppressive. The single fluorescent light hummed. The faint rocking of the ship. The vibration of the engines far below. It all felt like a coffin. She sat on the edge of the cot. The adrenaline was gone, leaving only the deep, throbbing ache in her ribs and the crushing weight of her failure. You failed them. The voice was back. Not a sound, but a feeling. A cold presence in the room. The ghost of the JTAC she'd lost. Red smoke, screaming static. Where are you, Valkyrie? She squeezed her eyes shut. I'm here. It wasn't the ROE that killed me, Elena. It was you. Your hesitation. Your perfect, cowardly precision. No, she whispered, her hands clenching the thin blanket. And now Atlas. The ghost was relentless. You failed him too. You had the shot. You waited. And when you finally got a second chance, you failed to convince the one man who mattered. You failed. You failed. You failed. You failed. The words hammered at her. She bowed her head, the weight of it all too much. Thorne was right. Hammer was right. She flew like a scalpel, not a hammer. She was all precision, all calculation. But when the moment came to act, to break the rules, to trust her gut, she froze. It wasn't the math that was wrong, Elena. It was you. The realization settled over her. She had presented her flawless calculations to Thorne, but she had presented them as a request, as a problem to be solved. She hadn't presented them as a fact. Her quiet fortitude. In that moment, it hadn't been strength. It had been weakness. It had been seen as weakness. She had asked for permission when she should have stated her intent. She looked up. The chronometer on the wall glowed. 04 seconds. 2 hours. 2 hours until dawn. 2 hours until Atlas was marched out and executed. In that moment, something inside her shifted. The guilt didn't vanish. The ghost didn't fade. They simply crystallized. They hardened from a crushing weight into a core of cold, diamond-hard resolve. The math was right. She could fly that plane. She could save that man. Her career was over. Thorne had made that clear. Insubordination. A court-martial. A dishonorable discharge. It was all coming. She accepted it. But if her career was over, it would be over after the mission, not before. She would not sit in this box and let a man die because a captain was too afraid to read a datapad. The choice was no longer a choice. It was an inevitability. It was the next step in the calculation. She stood up. The pain in her ribs was sharp, but it was just another variable to be managed. She walked to the wall intercom, the one Rayburn had used. She pressed the button. "Chief Kalfan," she said, her voice no longer hollow but flat. Pure. "This is Rostova, Valkyrie." A long silence. Just the hiss of static. She was about to press it again when a gruff, sleepy voice crackled back. "This line is not secure, Captain, and you've got 2 Marines on your door. What the hell are you doing?" "I'm going," she said. "The mission is proceeding. I just need to know one thing." Another silence. Longer. Heavier. "You're insane," Kalfan breathed. "CAG will have my stripes." "He can have them," Rostova said. "Is the plane fueled?" The static hissed. She could hear the chief breathing, warring with a lifetime of regulations, of following orders. Then, the click of the intercom. "Valkyrie, the hog is fueled, just sayin'." The magnetic lock on her door hissed and clicked open. Rostova didn't hesitate. She stepped out into the passageway. The 2 Marines were gone. Kalfan. He'd pulled them, probably on some manufactured maintenance emergency. Massive risk. A career-ending risk. She moved quickly, every step a sharp protest from her ribs. The ship was in darkened ship mode. Red lights cast long, ominous shadows down the corridors. She knew the route now. Down 2 decks, past the mess, to the hangar bay access ladder. The hangar was a different place than it had been hours ago. The bright maintenance floods were off, replaced by dim, red battle lanterns. The cavernous space was filled with shadow, and in the center, silhouetted against the open maw of the massive elevator, sat the A-10. It was a scarred, brutal thing. The port engine was gone, the wingtip jagged. The landing gear had been completely removed, the bays sealed with sheet metal, a rough, hurried job. It rested low on its belly, perched on a modified carrier dolly. It was the ugliest thing she had ever seen. It was beautiful. Chief Kalfan stood by the nose, his arms crossed. His crew, the same Skittles from before, were finishing the last tie-downs on the dolly. They worked with a quiet, intense efficiency. As she approached, Sting Rayburn emerged from the shadows. He was in his full flight gear, helmet tucked under his arm. "I thought you were escorting me to my room," Rostova said, her voice flat. "Change of plans," Rayburn replied. He too had shed his earlier arrogance. He looked grim, resolved. "I couldn't let you have all the fun, or all the court-martials." She looked at Kalfan. "Chief, You did this. Don't thank me, Captain, Calfin growled. You're all insane. But my boys, they like a challenge. And frankly, we hate seeing good machinery go to waste. He tossed a data pad to her. She's fueled. 2,000 rounds of HEI in the drum. We bypassed the port hydraulics just like you said. You'll have starboard controls and rudder. It'll fly like a pig with one leg, but it'll fly. The burden of their trust, their sacrifice settled on her. This was no longer just her decision. She was taking them all down with her. This is not just about me. Calfin, Rayburn, you know what this is, she said, forcing them to meet her eyes. This is UCMJ Article 90, direct disobedience of a superior officer. There is no coming back from this. We know what it is, Captain, Calfin said, his voice rough. Now, are you going to stand here and talk about regulations, or are you going to fly that plane? Rayburn stepped forward and handed her a different data pad. This one military grade. New intel. They've moved Atlas to the West Tower. The ZSUs are nested here and here. He tapped the screen. I'll be wheels up in 5. Call sign Sting 2-1. I'll fly top cover. I'll load up on harms, try to draw the fire from their radar-guided stuff. But those ZSUs, they're visual. They're all yours. He held her gaze. If you go down, you won't be alone. The shared risk hung in the air. The animosity between them, Air Force versus Navy, Hog versus Hornet, it had evaporated. All that was left were 2 pilots and a mission. Rostova nodded once. Sharp. Let's move. All right, Calfin bellowed, his voice echoing in the bay. This is a non-standard deck move, people. CAG's orders are to clear the deck for morning ops. So let's move this piece of Air Force ingenuity up to the 6-pack. He'd given himself an alibi. Plausible deniability. He's smart. Rostova climbed the ladder and settled into the cockpit. The familiar smell of the tub, the feel of the stick in her hand. It was home. She began the startup sequence, bypassing the dead engine, her hands moving with practiced, economical speed. The single engine whined, then roared to life. The entire airframe vibrated, the sound deafening in the enclosed bay. Valkyrie is spooling, she said over the local channel. Copy, Valkyrie, Calfin replied, his voice tight with tension. Elevator 3 is yours. Good luck, Captain. The massive platform of the elevator began to rise, lifting the wounded A-10 out of the red darkness of the hangar and up toward the pre-dawn blackness of the flight deck. The elevator locked into place with a heavy metallic thud. The A-10 was on the flight deck. The world changed instantly. The roar of the single TF-34 engine was torn away by the wind, a 40-knot gale screaming across the deck. It was still dark, the pre-dawn sky a deep, bruised purple. The deck was lit by dim red floods, casting everything in a hellish light. The ship was alive, vibrating under her, turning into the wind. Calfin's deck crew, looking like phantoms in the red gloom, immediately began unchaining the dolly, moving with frantic speed. Rostova's gaze was fixed forward. The angled deck, her only runway, looked impossibly short, a 900-foot path to either flight or a 60-foot drop. The bow of the ship rose and fell, a slow, breathing giant. She disconnected from the intercom, her world shrinking to the cockpit. Check flaps, check hydraulics, rudder. The stick felt heavy, sluggish, with only one system active. It will fly. Valkyrie, this is Sting 2-1, Rayburn's voice crackled in her helmet, cutting through the wind. Airborne, Angels 20. I'll see you on the other side. He was already up. He'd launched on time. The conspiracy was in motion. Copy, Sting, she breathed. Valkyrie is on deck. She was about to release the brakes when a new set of lights, bright white and blinding, flashed on from the island superstructure. They illuminated a small group of men walking directly into her path. Marines. And in front of them, walking with a calm, deliberate pace, was Captain Razor Thorn. Kolfin's crew froze. Rostova's hand stopped, hovering over the throttle. Thorn stopped 20 feet from the A-10's nose, the wind whipping at his flight suit. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He used a bullhorn. "Captain Rostova!" His voice, metallic and amplified, cut through the engine's whine. "Stand down! Shut down that engine! That is a direct order!" This was it. The final line. The UCMJ. Her career. She could shut it down. She could accept the arrest. She could spend the rest of her life in a cell, haunted by the ghost of Atlas, knowing she had been right but had failed to act. Or she could go. "He's following his book," she looked at Thorn's face, a mask of cold fury in the white light. He saw a broken aircraft and a disobedient officer. He saw a violation of his rules. "I'm following mine." She saw the math. She saw the ZSUs nested in the rock. She saw Atlas, blindfolded, being led to a wall. She did not reply. Her hand, steady, reached up. She pulled the dark visor of her helmet down. Click. The world outside dimmed. The white lights softened. Her HUD glowed green, a sanctuary of pure data. She looked at Thorn. A shadow behind a visor, an engine, and 2,000 rounds of 30mm. Then, deliberately, she turned her head forward. "Captain!" Thorn roared, his voice laced with disbelief. "I will not tell you again! Stand! Down!" Rostova placed her hand back on the throttle. She took a breath. Her thumb hit the switch, sealing the canopy. A low hiss, and the glass closed over her. The howl of the wind, the amplified voice on the bullhorn, the screams of the deck. It all faded, muffled, distant. The world shrank. It was just her. The green numbers on the glass and the 900 feet of steel, a silent final act of defiance. On the deck, Thorn watched. He stared at the dark, impassive canopy. He saw the defiance. He saw the absolute, terrifying certainty. He had 2 Marines with him. He could order them to fire. He could shoot her himself. He did neither. The math was insane. But the pilot was committed. Thorn lowered the bullhorn. He looked at this Air Force captain in her broken jet, a machine he despised, about to commit suicide off his deck. He stepped back, a single sharp motion. He motioned his Marines out of the blast path. He raised the bullhorn one last time, but his voice was different, not angry, resigned. "God help you, Captain!" Inside the sealed canopy, the world was green data and the deafening roar of the single, overworked engine. The A-10 strained against its brakes, chained to the deck by nothing but hydraulic pressure. The entire airframe shuddered, a beast wanting release. Rostova's left hand held the throttle, her right on the stick. Her feet were firm on the rudder pedals, holding the plane straight against the crosswind. Wind 48 knots over the deck. Good. Flaps 20 degrees. Non-standard, but it gives max lift. Engine 101%, pushing it. Deck 924 feet. Math 176 feet short. She closed her eyes for 1 second. The ghost of the JTAC. The image of Atlas, no more hesitation. The math is right. The 176-foot deficit would be covered by the ground effect. The 60-foot drop was not a fall. It was a runway. Her hand, steady. She pushed the throttle to its absolute maximum. The engine screamed, a high-pitched metallic shriek of protest. The vibration was so intense, her vision blurred. Hold it. Hold it. Now. She released the toe brakes. The A-10 leaped forward. The acceleration was sluggish, wrong. Not the powerful kick of a two-engine takeoff, but a lumbering, heavy surge. The deck lights flashed by, red blurs, 100 feet. Airspeed, 40 knots. Too slow, 200 feet. Airspeed, 55 knots. Too slow. The deck crew, Thorn, the island superstructure, all a peripheral streak. Her world was the airspeed indicator and the end of the deck. 400 feet. Airspeed, 70 knots. The nose wanted to lift. She fought it, keeping it down, building speed. 600 feet. Airspeed, 85 knots. The stall warning horn began to bleat, a solid, terrifying tone. It's too short. Her instincts, her training, every fiber of her being screamed, "Abort! Abort!" But there was no abort. There was no room. 800 feet. Airspeed, 95 knots. She was out of deck. The bow rushed toward her. She saw the V of the angled deck, the white water churning 60 feet below. Now. She didn't pull back on the stick. Not fully. That would induce a stall. Instead, she hauled back just enough to get the nose level, to set the wings at the perfect, calculated angle of attack, and then she flew off the end of the world. The A-10 did not fly. It fell. A gut-wrenching, stomach-dropping lurch as gravity claimed it. The stall horn was a solid wail in her ears. The green ocean rushed up, 10 feet above the waves, 20, 50. She was below the level of the flight deck. She could see the steel hull of the Truman racing past her right. Hold it, hold it. The ground effect cushion hit. It was exactly as the math predicted. The air, compressed between the massive wings and the flat ocean, became a solid, lifting force. The A-10 stopped falling. The stall horn sputtered, chirped, and went silent. Airspeed, 96 knots, 97, 98, she was flying. She was 30 feet above the waves in the shadow of the carrier, but she was flying. The nose was heavy. The single engine, offset from the center line, created a massive yaw. She compensated with rudder, her leg aching from the pressure. The plane was a wounded, unbalanced animal, 100 knots. She eased the stick back, a fraction of an inch. The A-10, groaning in protest, began to climb. Slow, agonizing. She cleared the bow wake, the plane shuddering in the turbulence. 110 knots. She was stable. She was alive. She was airborne. Rostova took one single, shuddering breath. She banked the A-10, its one wing heavy, and pointed the nose toward the coast. She thumbed the radio. Her voice was pure ice. "Valkyrie 1-1 is airborne. Sting 2-1, I'm on my way." Back on the Truman, Thorn watched the A-10's single-engine exhaust fade into the blackness. He lowered his binoculars. He said nothing at all. The sun was a bloody smear on the eastern horizon. Dawn. Rostova raced toward it, her wounded A-10 vibrating, fighting the air. The coastline emerged from the dark, a solid black line against the graying sea. The fortress was a dark smudge on that line. "Valkyrie, Sting 2-1 is painting the target." Rayburn's voice crackled, tight with G-forces. "Sam radars are active. I'm going in. Magnum." High above her, a streak of white smoke marked the path of Rayburn's harm missile, diving toward the fortress. He's drawing their fire. He was the fast mover, the bait, so she, the slow mover, could be the killer. "Copy, Sting. Valkyrie is visual. Fence is in." The fortress rushed to meet her. It was exactly as the intel showed: a coastal battery, stone walls, and nested air defenses. The ZSU-23-4s were awake. Tracers, like bright red fingers, reached up for her. Popcorn. A string of 23mm shells ripped past her canopy. The plane shuddered as shrapnel pinged harmlessly off the titanium tub surrounding her. Built for this. "Sting, ZSUs are active. I'm taking fire. Copy, I see 'em, but the SA-13s are still hot. Stay low. Another alarm blared. Missile lock. One of the radar-guided systems had seen her. Sting, I'm spiked. I've got him. Brake right, brake right. She jammed the stick right, the plane responding sluggishly, her single engine screaming. A white streak passed just over her canopy, an SA-13, fooled by Rayburn's electronic warfare. He'd saved her. She leveled out, low over the water, lining up for the attack run. The West Tower, that's where Atlas was. Her HUD locked onto the target. Her thumb moved to the GAU-8 trigger. PID required. The Ghost was in the cockpit. Red smoke, screaming static. Where are you, Valkyrie? Her hand tightened. Not this time. Valkyrie, I see movement! West Tower courtyard! Rayburn yelled. Looks like shit. It's an execution detail. They're moving him. You have 5 seconds. No time for ROE. No time for PID. She saw them. Small, dark figures. A man being dragged between 2 guards. This was the moment. The exact same moment from 2 years ago. The JTAC. Hesitate and he dies. Fire, and she might kill the wrong man. She had to trust. Not the rules. Not the book. Him. Sting, I cannot PID Atlas. She transmitted, her voice straining. I don't care. I have PID on the threat. You are cleared hot, Valkyrie. Light 'em up. Cleared hot. The words were an absolution. She was no longer just a pilot following rules. She was a weapon, aimed by her wingman. She blinked away the Ghost. Her thumb depressed the trigger. The brrr-t of the Avenger was the sound of the world tearing apart. The jet bucked and slowed, a massive vibration shaking her teeth. A 3-second burst. The stream of high-explosive incendiary rounds, a red, glowing line of death, walked directly across the courtyard. The stone wall disintegrated. The ZSU nested beside it vanished in a ball of fire. The execution detail ceased to exist. She pulled the stick, climbing hard, the single engine straining. Sting! Good hits! Good hits! Target destroyed! Re-attacking east wall! Negative, Valkyrie! Get out! Rayburn screamed. Sam launch! Sam launch! 6 o'clock! She didn't have time to look. She dumped flares and chaff, jamming the stick forward, diving back toward the water. A massive bang rocked the aircraft. The world went sideways. Her one good engine sputtered. Fire. Engine fire right. I'm hit again! Mayday, mayday, Valkyrie 1-1 is going down! She fought the controls. The fire was out, but the engine was dead. No power, no thrust, just a 29,000-pound glider. Sting, Atlas is clear. Mission complete. Elena, talk to me. Where are you? Dead stick, she breathed, her voice calm. The ground rushed up. I'm not going to make the water. She saw a strip of beach. Sand. It was enough. She leveled the wings, aimed for the sand, and braced for the second crash landing of her life. The debriefing room at Bagram was a small beige box. The fluorescent lights hummed, a flat, monotonous sound that drilled into her skull. It smelled of stale air and floor wax. It had been 3 days. 3 days since she'd wrestled the dead A-10 onto a strip of sand. 3 days since Sting Rayburn, flying top cover, had guided an HH-60 Pavehawk to her location, his voice, thick with relief, breaking all radio protocol. 3 days since Atlas, confirmed alive and recovered, had been flown to a secure facility. And 3 days she had been under administrative confinement, awaiting the inevitable. The adrenaline was long gone. All that remained was the bone-deep ache in her ribs and the oppressive silence. The mission was a success. Her career was a casualty. The door opened. Rostova looked up, expecting her Air Force-appointed legal counsel. It was Captain Razor Thorne. He was immaculate, as always. His Navy flight suit seemed out of place in the dusty, landlocked beige of Bagram. He held nothing in his hands. He was alone. He did not sit. He simply stood in the center of the small room, regarding her. The silence stretched, thick and heavy. He was not her commanding officer. He had no jurisdiction here. He had no reason to be here. "Captain Rostova," he said. His voice was the same as it had been on the flag bridge. Cold, precise. "Captain Thorne," she replied, her voice flat. She would not apologize. She would not explain. The math had been right. Thorne's eyes scanned the bare room, the single table, the two chairs. He looked for the first time like a man processing a new piece of data, one that didn't fit his model. "Intel reports the asset is secure," he stated. It was not a question. "So I've heard," Rostova said. "I also read the report from Lieutenant Commander Rayburn. He seems to think highly of your unorthodox gunnery skills. The Hog was built for it." "So you said." Thorne reached into his pocket. He placed a hand on the metal table. When he lifted it, a heavy brass coin sat on the surface. Rostova stared at it. It was a challenge coin. On its face was the crest of the USS Truman Carrier Strike Group. On, the reverse, the single word that defined him: Razor. The CAG's personal coin. It was not a medal. It was not a pardon. It was something more complex. It was a currency of respect passed between warriors. He understood. He understood the math. He understood the sacrifice. He understood that she had broken his rules to uphold a deeper duty. It wasn't forgiveness. It was acknowledgement. She looked up from the coin to his face. His eyes were unchanged, still chips of blue ice. But the anger was gone. The math was right. "My LSO reviewed your landing footage," Thorne said, his voice quiet. "The rudder slew to kill the speed. He's putting it in the NATOPS manual as a last-ditch option. The Rostova maneuver." She said nothing. The irony was bitter. The act that would end her career was now a textbook procedure. "The charges of insubordination," Thorne continued, "are of course being filed by my office. Your command will have to deal with those as they see fit." "I understand, sir." "But," he paused, "I have also attached a full after-action report. It will include my personal attestation that your analysis of the Shorad threat was 100% accurate, and that a Hornet, my Hornets, would have failed." He had given her a shield, a small one, but it was enough. He stood there for another second, a man defined by rules, facing the woman who had broken them and been proven right. He nodded once. A sharp, precise motion. "Captain." He turned on his heel and walked out. The door clicked shut, leaving her alone with the hum of the lights. Rostova stared at the empty doorway, the ghost of the JTAC finally, blessedly, silent. She reached out, her fingers tracing the raised edges of the coin. It was heavy, solid, real. She picked it up, the cold brass warming in her hand. It was not a victory. There would be no parade, but it was recognition. And for her, it had always been about the work, not the glory. She closed her hand around the coin, a small, hard piece of proof, quiet fortitude. The door hissed open again. Rostova didn't look up, assuming it was a guard. She was wrong. "You look like hell, Valkyrie." Lieutenant Colonel Hammer Vokes stood in the doorway, his own flight suit covered in the fine dust of Bagram. He held a datapad. He looked tired, older than he had just days ago. He stepped inside and let the door close, the click sounding unnaturally loud. He didn't sit. He just looked at her, his gaze taking in the exhaustion, the bruising on her cheek, and finally, the brass coin she still held in her left hand. A CAG coin, Hammer murmured, his voice a mix of disbelief and something else. Awe. You know, in 20 years, I've never actually seen one of those given to an Air Force pilot, especially not one who stole a plane. Rostova's grip tightened on the coin. Sir. Don't sir me, Elena. I've just spent the last hour in a VTC with a very angry admiral and a surprisingly quiet captain. Thorne. He ran a hand over his face. The charges are extensive. Disobeying a direct order, reckless endangerment, insubordination, destruction of government property, twice. It's a miracle they're not adding piracy to the list. He paused, letting the weight of the words settle. You're finished, Rostova. Officially. The court-martial is a formality. You'll be lucky to keep your pension. Rostova met his gaze. She said nothing. The ghost was silent. The math was right. She would accept the consequences. Hammer watched her, a small, frustrated sigh escaping him. You always did fly like a scalpel. I just never figured you'd use it to cut your own throat. He stepped closer and tossed his data pad onto the table. It clattered next to the coin. Thorne's AAR. He claims your unassisted takeoff was a calculated act of professional necessity based on a unique confluence of environmental variables and a profound understanding of aeronautical physics. He's a poet, that man. The math was right, she said, her voice quiet. The math was insane, Hammer countered, but it was right. He looked at the coin again. He's taking the heat, you know. The Navy is crucifying him for letting you go. He's probably trading his career for yours. That, she had not calculated. The weight of another's sacrifice. He's also, Hammer tapped the datapad. He's formally requesting the procedure. The Rostova maneuver, he's calling it. The Navy wants it for their emergency ops manual, and the Air Force, well, we can't let the Navy have all the fun. He pushed the datapad toward her. You're grounded, Captain. Indefinitely. Pending a review that will likely end your career. Your life as a pilot is over. Rostova nodded. She had made her peace with that. But, Hammer said, his voice softening just a fraction, your life as an engineer has just gotten very complicated. I need a full technical write-up. I need the physics. I need the performance charts. I need the step-by-step procedures for taking a 30,000-pound aircraft off a 900-foot deck with one engine and no landing gear. He pointed at the blank pad. Your new mission, Captain. You have 48 hours. He turned and walked to the door. He paused, his hand on the handle. You won't get a medal for this, Elena. You won't get a promotion. You'll be a footnote in a technical manual that very few people will ever read. You saved Atlas, but you broke the system. The system doesn't forgive. I understand, sir. No, I don't think you do, Hammer said, looking back. You won. Not for glory or for a flag. You won because your math was better than everyone else's. You proved them all wrong. He opened the door. Get to work, Captain. He left. Rostova was alone again in the beige room. She looked at the heavy brass coin, a symbol of an impossible act, a silent respect earned. Then she pulled the datapad closer, her fingers hovering over the blank screen. The work was not about glory. It was never about glory. It was about the work itself. The quiet, relentless pursuit of the solution, no matter the cost. She took a breath, the pain in her ribs a dull, familiar ache, and began to type.